Alrighty, here we go, man. Brian checking in here. I'm at Manuel Valverde Park here in Lathrop, California. If you're not familiar, it's a really nice park, and I play basketball here a lot. Just chilling. It's a place I like to come to hang out, whether I'm playing or not. It's a cool park. But anyways, I just got off of work. For those that aren't familiar, I'm a 6th grade teacher at the moment, multiple subjects, first time doing it, so it's been pretty wild. I'll speak on that a little bit later, but today was interesting. It was a tough day. I think the kids were definitely a bit rowdy. Really just trying to get them to understand what it's like to transition from one thing to the next, but then also me as a first-time teacher trying to figure out like what is an acceptable noise level, or just like what is acceptable behavior during these times, because I've seen a lot of different ways of handling it. I've seen the teachers that are super strict and like will not tolerate any speaking during moments like that, and then I've seen the other side of it where it's just kind of like a circus. And I am comfortable on both sides of that. I can be in those moments. I guess for me, the challenge is figuring out like what do I want out of my students. Like what routines and expectations am I trying to get out of them? But other than that, it was a cool day. I felt a little extra tired. I took 2 naps, interestingly enough. The kids have PE during 3rd period, and I'll take a quick like 10-15 minute nap during that time. And then I have a 30-minute break for lunch, and I felt sufficiently tired where I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna take another nap. And it ended up being pretty much most of the period. I would want to say like 20 minutes most of the time. But honestly, sleep is another topic that I could probably touch on, but I'll say at the moment, I could probably be a lot better with my sleep. I'm kind of, what do they say, burning it on both ends. I'm going to bed late and I'm waking up quite early on some days. So, not the best for overall health and, daily function, but it is what it is at the moment. At the end of the day, we usually finish by hanging out outside. There's a courtyard where the students can hang out. And for me, I think it's really important for them to get out just because our school is mostly indoors. So the kids are inside like 90% of the day. So for me, it's just like, let's just go outside. Just be out, get some sunlight, run around a little bit, play. And they enjoy it. I think as soon as they're out there, they're playing, and it's cool. It's good for them. After school, that was cool today. So I usually have to stay until 4, and in my class, there's the after school kids will be in there, and I have 8th graders in my class. I teach 6th grade. And I got some work done, which was nice, just trying to get ready for next week. But then with the kids that were in there, we got into a pretty interesting conversation. If I'm being honest, I can't recall what sparked it at the moment, but essentially we touched upon a lot of different subjects in a short time span. We talked about coronavirus, we talked about the government, we talked about monkeypox, we talked about, now I remember. So it started off with the conversation around the Stockton serial killer, because that's, so I teach in Stockton, and so a lot of the kids are from Stockton, and that's kind of been a topic of discussion recently. So we started off with that, and then we got into some of the kids have been, I think, involved in sexual education recently, so that came up. We got into that, and then it got into the things like coronavirus, monkeypox, governments. We talked about Ukraine, Russia, the ongoings there, and just all the different narratives that we've heard surrounding that situation, and the possibility of nuclear war. And then we got into, what do we get into? Jeffrey Epstein and Rick and Morty. So it was really, really interesting, and everybody was super engaged. So it was like, I want to say 5 other 8th graders, and then their teacher, their after-school teacher, and then myself. So it was super cool, super engaging. I won't get into the details of too much, but for now at least. But that was the conversation that we had. And again, I'll just say it one more time. It was super interesting. I think for me, because I'm involved in these discussions, or I hear a lot of these discussions on these topics myself. So I guess this is a good opportunity to say I really, really enjoy podcasts. I will say I've been on them pretty regularly since 2018, 2019. And yeah, that's like a whole nother separate discussion too. But I'll just quickly say, like, for me, they serve a variety of purposes. One, they've been super educational, right? Being able to hear from professors, experts, people at the top of their fields speak on their subject matter for an extended period of time, like 2 to 3 hours, sometimes even longer. That's been a game changer, and just in terms of my education, because just to quickly touch upon that, I'm a really curious person. I really try to explore everything I can. And one podcaster that I listen to a lot put it pretty well. His name is Lex Friedman, and he's like, it's really hard for me to get bored, if at all. And I can say that about myself. Like, if there's something out there that somebody can speak on with, enthusiasm and their passion, I'm open to listening. And even though I may not like it myself, I can at least engage with that topic and be open to listening. And even, if it's like building something, I'd be down to try it out, experiment, So the podcast, just being able to listen to people from all walks of life, right, speak at length, has been a game changer for my life, honestly. So they serve that purpose. I would say that's like the biggest one. And then the second one is, this one might be a little bit weird to some people, but then I also think others will resonate with this idea as well. It's like, you are in some ways like hanging out with these people, right? You're a fly on the wall, and although you're not a participant in that conversation, you're there with them, and you get to hear everything that they have to say, and it's kind of like hanging out to some extent. Again, you're not a participant, but you are kind of there hanging out with them. You're experiencing what that moment is like. And this is a much deeper conversation too, where in recent years, I think this is definitely a trend as you get older, but I think it's also a situation that we should look at in our current times, where people have less and less people around them, whether it be family or friends, people that they interact with on a regular basis. Like, that number has decreased over the past 20 and 30 years. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. And I can say personally, I've definitely experienced that. A lot of the people that I interact with and I'm friends with have also touched upon that to some extent. And I've heard about it, from a variety of the journalists and podcasters that I've listened to talk about this, where there's like a loneliness epidemic, if you want to use that phrasing, but just an issue around loneliness. Like, people have less and less people. And so for me, being a really curious person, always pushing the boundaries of what I'm learning and listening to, it's a little bit hard not having people around me where I can exchange an idea in conversation with. Yeah, just to put it simply, it's been hard. And so these podcasts have kind of served as a way for me to stay in the conversation. And even though I'm not a participant, I really enjoy it. I think it gives me a way to see where my thinking is and see where other people's thinking is. And that's been huge, honestly, because otherwise I would be by myself. And the nice thing about podcasts is that you can do it while you're doing other things. So I drive a decent amount. I'm in the car a decent amount. I do, work and errands, all kinds of stuff. So if I'm doing something that doesn't require my direct focus and attention, then most likely I have an earbud in and I'm listening to a podcast. And yeah, it makes me feel like I'm around other people. And dang it, I forgot what I was gonna say. It's all good. Maybe it'll come to me. Yeah, anyways, I'll just reiterate the main idea is that podcasts have been a huge part of my life in recent history. But yeah, we had a cool conversation with the students in after school today. And then I left work, I left the school, drove, and here I am. So I guess I should quickly mention, or not should, but I do want to quickly mention that I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Just this idea of recording something for myself. And, to start off, the hope was to do it for at least 15 minutes. Probably will meet that mark, which is cool. But there have been a lot of signs, at least what seem to be like signs in my life that have pointed me to just do this, right? And I'll give you a couple of reasons. One of the podcasts that I listen to a lot is Modern Wisdom with this guy named Chris Williamson. And the way he puts it is, if you just take your phone out, whatever you can to record, sit down and do a dialogue with yourself. It serves a variety of purposes. One, if you're trying to be a podcaster, well, eventually you're going to have to do this. I don't know, well, I guess I am by default. By doing this, I am trying to be. But then the other reasons include seeing where your thinking is for yourself, right? And there's few better ways to do that than to actually speak on what is in your mind, right? And doing so, you reveal where the holes in your thinking are. And that's kind of how he put it. That's my interpretation, at least. And I think that's big, at least for me personally, because being someone that is always learning, and especially a lot that I've thought about in recent times and just the information that I've been exposed to, it's like you can never be too sure that your thinking is complete, is that it's all the way there, that you know everything that you need to know and your worldview is set, right? And me, as someone who is constantly exposing myself to new ideas, I'm working through these things in my head. And although I have, intuitions and strong inclinations and I favor certain ideas over others, I do still, to some degree, keep myself open to interpretation, right? Just open to new ways of looking at things. So doing this, recording this conversation, you kind of get to see for yourself where you're at, how you can you speak on it, can you speak on it succinctly, how well do you actually understand a certain concept, idea, etc. So there's that. I've heard that in a lot of different podcasts recently. And then on a personal note, like one of the ways that I try to approach life these days is to do something that is really hard and to do something that is quite scary for you within reason. And one of the things that has been quite scary for me is the idea of putting my own ideas and thoughts out there. I've done it before, so the muscle within me is there, but the fear is constantly there, and I think it holds me back from a lot of different things. I mean, an easy example to look at would be social media. Like, I do have things out there, but I am very, very reluctant to share anything at all. So I'll go, long periods of time without putting anything out. That's kind of changed recently because I own this. Let's call it a basketball training program. Like, I run a basketball training business for young kids and even older athletes. So maintaining a social presence on that has been a key part to getting the word out there about my business. And even there, I definitely feel the same reluctance and hesitancy to share. But at this point, I've kind of convinced myself that in order to, build this business up, I have to put myself out there. I have to be putting the bat signal out, like, hey, I do this, here are my services, like, let's work, if anybody's interested, and just putting information out there to help the basketball community. If you're not familiar with me or don't know me too much, I love basketball. It's as simple as that. Like, played it pretty much my whole life. I watch it. I'm a Golden State Warriors fan, but I watch anybody, watch any game, anytime, talk about it with anybody, and definitely play it as much as I can. Back to the social presence thing. I'm very hesitant to put stuff out there. It definitely gets the bubbles within me of nervousness and angst and anxiousness and all of that. But a lot of the people that I've been listening to will kind of encourage you to move forward despite that hesitancy, despite that fear. Obviously, again, within reason, right? Whatever your capabilities are, nothing that threatens your safety. But, push the boundaries of what you're capable of. And that can mean a lot of different things. That could be getting up in front of a room to speak, right? Everybody is familiar with public speaking, or voicing something to a loved one, a boss that you've been wanting to get off your chest, but you're not sure how they're going to handle it, right? Because it could be confrontational, or it's just a heavy topic. Being able to speak up with confidence is huge. So I'm trying to stay on this trend of doing things that scare me. And again, this in a variety of domains. I've heard about it a lot from people that I listen to. So here we are. Simply parked the car, got my phone and microphone out, and was like, all right, I'm going to sit down and record something real quick and see how it goes. And yeah, so far it's been pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, it feels pretty natural, and I think I can figure this out. One thing that I did want to mention that just came to mind from my day at school, my day at work today, that is kind of related, honestly. One of the teachers that I'm pretty close with, another 6th grade teacher, she had asked me when we were outside and all the kids were getting picked up, she asked me, how you doing? And for her, or with her rather, I can be pretty honest and open. Like, we have a pretty good, just working relationship, and she's a cool human. So she had asked me how I was doing. I had responded with all right, and then I got into my response. And so here's here's where I'll probably get a little bit deep, but so be it. That's the nature of these things. For me, how are you doing has always been an interesting question, right? It's like when you observe situations most of the time, especially I guess in like a working environment or just outside of people that you're comfortable with or associate with regularly, the typical response is, "Oh, I'm good, chilling, I'm all right, good." And people move on, right? It's kind of like, I guess you could say it's a pleasantry. It's a routine thing. Just to be nice. Like, "Hey, how you doing? Good? All right, cool, me too. Catch you later." But again, with her, I can be pretty open and elaborate and be honest. And again, here's another thing that I've been trying to do a lot more personally. It's like a principle that I live by, at least I try to, is to be as honest as I can be with everybody, right? To not hold back what I'm thinking. Yeah, to put it simply, that's what it is. And I'm not disrespecting anybody or anything like that. I'm not, calling them names. I'm not being weird, but rather just to speak without hesitation, to say what I'm thinking, to say what's on my mind, and be okay with that. So, given that, I told her, pretty much there's been a lot on my mind recently. There's a lot going on in my personal life. Just me as a young human, family situation. I'm an older brother, and of older brother of 3 younger siblings that I'm trying to, just be a decent example for and guide them however I can in whatever way that makes sense, but also let them be their own people, right? And just figuring out like where that is, how hands-on am I, how hands-off am I? It's an interesting dilemma for me. So there's a lot going on, I guess you could say. And then you could also say that there's a lot going on in the world around us. And maybe, see, for me, like the way I try to look, maybe it's because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm pretty in tune with the happenings of the world, at least as far as I can be, right? It does seem like, there's a lot of tension in the air. There's a lot of hostility that, the embers of, conflict are around us. And there's just a lot of going on. Like, we have serious things to contend with, right? Whether it be just in the United States internally or as a world, as a globe, whatever you want to call it, right? We've got the Ukraine-Russia thing. We've got China as like a hostile nature, energy towards the United States, towards the West. You've got North Korea. You've got all kinds of conflicts in the Middle East. So it's an interesting time, and you've got this inflation thing. You've got, that's a whole nother thing. You've got this inflation thing that's been happening, and countries are getting into hyperinflation. People's livelihoods, life savings are being, I guess you could say, depleted, destroyed. And you look at all of it and you try to, I guess here's the dilemma for me. It's like, how much do I pay attention to all these things to stay informed? But then how much do I have to let go to not get overwhelmed, to not let it consume me? And here's a concept that I think a lot of people will understand and resonate with. And for me, it comes from the philosophy of Stoicism. And one of their basic ideas is to not get overwhelmed by the things that are outside of your control. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard that in a variety of fashions. For me, it was through Stoicism. That's one of their biggest things. And I try to remind myself, like, hey, a lot of this stuff is out of your hand. So don't let it consume you. But then it's tough because I am a person that tries to stay informed, that tries to stay in tune with the happenings, and then at the very least do that, right? But then you ask yourself, like, okay, as a fellow human and somebody that has some level of compassion and care and empathy, you ask yourself, like, okay, well, what is in my power to impact the world around me? And I know that sounds like a grand statement, but it is the question, right? Like, what is the capability of my reach? What is the capability of my what can I do? And obviously there's no exact answer to this question. But anyways, I didn't say all of this to the other teacher, but that's kind of how I explained it to her, where I was like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot on my mind. Here at the school, the school is definitely, it's been a challenge just for me personally, just figuring things out, right? Like, it's all brand new to me. So trying to get systems and routines in place. Again, personally, there's a lot happening in my life. At least that's what it feels like. And, I don't have all the answers and much guidance. So there's a lot of contemplation there. And then, again, paying attention to the surroundings. There's been a lot. There's been a lot to look at and think about. But she was really cool about it. She's like, I hear you. And, to some degree, I'll get into a similar line of thinking myself. And, she shared a little bit about how she thinks about it. And or one of the things she mentioned was that there's probably a lot more people out there that are thinking similar things to you, such as myself. And this is her talking, and one of the things that I sometimes feel is like, am I crazy for thinking like this, or going down these rabbit holes, or going this far with my thinking? Am I crazy? And that's always, it's kind of funny for me personally, but then it's also a relief to hear, because you realize that no, like, you aren't crazy for thinking this way, or at least just it's not even like thinking this way, it's just being able to think about it and explore this line of thinking, let's say, right? And sometimes you do feel crazy, because this could be a cynical perspective, but at the same time, I'm sure there's some truth to it, where it's like most people are not thinking about the world around them. They're just the way I put it is like, one, they're either stuck on their day-to-day grind, just trying to survive, right, and get through the day, which, all power to them. I respect that. I get that. I totally understand that. And then there's the other where it's just like, you know what? I'm here to enjoy life, right? Whether that be through, whatever that means to people, right? And so, I'm not trying to pay attention. I'm not trying to get involved. It's out of my hands. Don't think too much about it. Just have fun, live life, travel, eat, gamble, whatever it is. And so for me personally, it is a little bit tough to interact with others, because, these things are not necessarily the friendliest topics of conversation. So you kind of just go with the flow and to blend in. So you kind of do feel like a crazy person. But as mentioned, this teacher, she was like, yeah, I'm glad that other people think the same way, and I'm not crazy. And I kind of reiterated that to her. And then another teacher that was kind of listening, that was next to us, he hopped in the conversation too, and he had a decent amount of input to share, that he feels similar, but also struggles with, what's the right amount, right? Like, not let it consume you, but then also see like pay attention enough to know your surroundings, know what is happening around the world. And that's kind of how I put it, really. Like, yes, we want to, try to keep our minds off these things, but at some point there's an overlap between your life and life that is of where you're at, your surroundings, right? Whether that be the country, the government, the people, just the rules, the laws, the norms, whatever it is, you want to be aware of it to some extent. At least, again, that's my thoughts. So yeah, that was cool to have that moment, both with the teachers and again with the students that I had mentioned earlier. And let's see where we're at. We're at 30 minutes, which is pretty cool, man. I guess I'll just wrap up with this. Touched upon a decent amount today in this one. It was a good start, which I like. I did it. I like that. I shared a decent amount. The plan is to keep going. Again, just even the idea of putting this out there brings me hesitancy. It gives me the goosebumps. But, like I mentioned, I am trying to push the boundaries on what I am capable of. So I look forward to seeing where this goes. I am going to try to make this as regularly as possible. I don't know what that'll look like at the moment, whether it's once a week, twice a week. I am going to try to be within reason to start off. One thing that I can say that I've been thinking about a lot is some will be short, some will be long. Like, I've had thoughts that are super specific, super niche, but I think are relatable to life, that could resonate. So, like, for example, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is patience, right? And you could talk about that in a variety of ways, whether it be like interpersonal relationships or in life, right? Like, whether it be like your personal progress or as a person, or in business, or in your career, whatever it is, right? Like, patience is a huge thing, and just being able to endure over the long run, right? Because a lot of people will, they'll have excitement for something at the beginning and then that'll quickly fade. So patience is something I've been thinking about a lot, especially for my basketball business. Like, I want that to blow up. I want it to do well, but then reminding myself that it's going to take time, it's going to take effort and consistency and patience. So just keep grinding away at that. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening. I look forward to what comes of this, honestly. And I'll just quickly say, another reason that I'm doing this is to reach out and connect with others, right? And whatever idea from this resonates with you, even remotely, and you want to engage in conversation, reach out, man. Let me know. Let me know. So, thank you for listening.